today I want to talk about poetry, and I think one, well, going back when I did forensics at PFW, we did I did poetry and I did duo, and there was one thing with poetry, and I was talking to Fred about this. I don't know if it's still relevant now with the rules and stuff, but you could read your own poetry if it was published. And so it was interesting because a lot of judges, they liked the poetry that I read, but they didn't know if I could read it. And I would tell them, well, yeah, it's published and everything and all that. And they just kind of look at me strangely, like, okay. But they would tell me that it was a refreshing thing from all the Sylvia Plath that they were getting, in these readings. And I was like, well, that's great. But they didn't know how to, judge me. So what I want to do today, this is called Magnifying the Minute, because I think poets specifically, but all artists do this. All artists can look at anything and give it life. And that's all we do. And so so if I have this remote control and I move the remote control from my right to my left, there's no big deal on that. But now if I personify the remote control and then have the remote control speak, now we're listening to a remote control speak, and I can say anything, how dare you put your hands on me? This is COVID times and you're going to put your hands on me without any gloves. And I was over there with the other remote control. Now you put me over here. I have nobody to talk to, and I can go on and on just from giving human attributes to an inanimate object. So poetry, when I'm looking at poetry and how to create poetry, I'm looking at all of this stuff. And I think what happens is, like Lucille Clifton once said, I'm open to poetry, so poetry comes to me. And I thought that was very apropos because I felt the same way. It's like, it's the weirdest thing. When I, for example, I have to sleep with my telephone, with my Android, because this is my writing process, part of my writing process. So what's changed is, back in the day, if I would lay down, and then what happens when I lay down, take a couple of deep breaths, right? You're decompressing from the day, and then try to go to sleep. And what happens for me is that the ticker tape of everything starts going through my head, just like it was the New York Stock Exchange. The thread at the bottom is just the feed at the bottom just going, and all that kind of stuff is just going through my head. So I get up and have to go to, back then, the computer or a laptop and write down stuff that was coming to me at that time, depending on when it is or when it was. And now I'm able to take my phone and text it to myself. And the thing is, the great thing about this technology in that one instance is that I'm able to do that and have the initial idea that I wanted. So when I wake up in the morning, I know, the skeletal aspect of that, compared to if you just go to sleep and you wake up in the morning, you're like, well, I knew it was something about a dog, and there was a yellow moon, and my mother was cooking biscuits, making biscuits, and that's all you have. You have no connective tissues to it. So having my phone and being able to text it to myself, I can lay back down. And the other thing I do, which is weird, is so all this weird stuff, I don't know any of you, and just telling you all this stuff. So the other thing I do is I listen to OTR, which is Old Time Radio. It's a free thing on um, trying to think of the app, but it's a free thing where you can get, if you go to OTR, old time radio, it's free. You can get it, and it has all the old time radio stuff. I'm really into like Sherlock Holmes, mysteries, detective stuff, Boston Blackie, um, all that kind of stuff. Dashiell Hammond, all that, all that stuff. So I listen to that, and that puts me to sleep. So these are ways to get that ticker tape, because my ticker tape never turns off. It's always on. And as a writer, as an artist, I think that happens a lot. So what I want to do is a natural thing that I'm going, kind of going back to what rappers do, the pen and the pad. And so I'm going to ask for a suggestion from somebody, or theme, so to speak. And then I'm going to build off that theme and hopefully create a piece of poetry that we can look at the end, but kind of show you how I process going through this, and organically. And this is really weird, but I thought this would be the best way to do it, so you can see, see me. It's like somebody up there drawing somebody, at one of those off the side of the street or something like that. So I'm going to create a poem, and if I think I can do this. Yeah. So I'm going to try to do it on the present now, once I get that up. But first, I want to just ask for suggestions to a theme of what I could write about. Whatever is on your mind, the first thing that's popping out of your mind, and then I'm going to go from that and try to create this as we go along.
Well, Curtis, since I've known you for a long time, since 91, I'll say friendship.
Okay, friendship.
By the way, y'all, just to clarify, Curtis used to babysit me when I was a freshman in high school. We didn't go to school together, okay? We didn't go to school together. We actually did. We went to IPFW together. I was a freshman when he was probably a sophomore or a junior, something like that.
Well, it took me forever. It took me like 9 years to get my degree. So I was going part-time. I was working full-time and part-time, and so I was taking classes part-time. So like I always tell my students, I don't care what you do with the 10 years. 10 years is going to pass. Well, I do care what you do with it. 10 years is going to pass. 10 years is going to pass. What do you do with those 10 years? You could keep doing what you're doing. You could get educated. You can get a job. There's so many, you can raise a family. There's so many things you can do. And at the end of 10 years, you're looking at, oh, this is what I've done in that time. So yeah. Fred and I go back a long time. So Fred's giving me friendship. So I'm just going to ask for like 5 or 6 words that you all will connect with friendship. Somebody give me
childhood.
Sorry, Ronnie?
Childhood.
Childhood? Okay. Anyone else?
Loyal.
Trust.
Okay. What was that, Nina?
Trust.
Trust.
Family.
Family. Okay, I'll do 2 more.
What about struggle?
Struggle. And 1 more.
How about warmth?
warmth. Okay, so I have friendship, childhood, loyal, trust, family, struggle, warmth. So let me see how I can do this. So I'm going to get on present now and add a window.
Hey, Julie, could you put your phone on mute, please? Your computer on mute? Thank you.
Maybe.
Okay, hold on a second. I hope I'm doing this correctly. Okay. Okay, I'm trying to see representing to everyone. Okay, hold. When it says I'm presenting, let me stop and start over. Okay, so I'm having trouble trying to get to my computer to share with you. So we're going to do this the old school way. I'm just going to write it out on pen and pad. Okay, so in thinking of friendship, the first image that comes to me is my friend next door, Bill Cole, and he had a basketball court, and we always wanted a basketball court in the backyard, but didn't have one. My mother did get one after I moved out for my little nephew who couldn't even reach the doggone basket. He was so young. And I was like, how dare you get one? Anyway, so I'm thinking of Bill in the basketball court. So my first instinct is to connect to that. And I'm connecting to the time that Bill and I had where we call it the spectrum like they have in Philadelphia. We turn our the lights, the backyard lights towards the court and light it up. And there was us in the nighttime playing basketball. So that's the first image that's coming to me. So what I'm dealing with now is addressing that image. And what poetry does in so many ways, it evokes emotions, it evokes things. It's kind of like what I try to do with poetry is replicate a moment or give you that moment or give you that emotion that I was feeling at that time. And that's the hardest thing to do, but sometimes you can do it Poetry says something. Poetry does and says something specifically in a way that we can never say it. And I think that's probably the biggest thing about poetry. You can you can always say, uh, you know, love is all the things you do for me, and that kind of thing. And love being an abstract concept is hard to address because because of the abstraction in it. And so if I ask all of you what is love, you're all going to have a different, definition of that. But if I say love is my lips on the nape of her neck, even though that may not be love for you, I've placed you in a situation and in a place where you can at least viscerally connect to that, right? So using the five sensory attributes, hearing, taste, touching, all that, and addressing that, love is my lips on the chill bumps on the nape of her neck. And now just getting you closer to that image. So instead of saying, you know, uh, these philosophical things, you're trying to connect people to it. Love is my grandma's apple pie. You may not like apple pie. You may like rhubarb pie. You may not like pie at all. Whatever that is, that's the case. But you can connect to that. So that's what poetry is trying to do. So the first thing I'm writing down is, hold on a second. It's us. So my first line says, it's us, comma, you and me, period. And so I've always been taught to place the reader right away because you don't want the reader floundering all over the place. It's us, you and me. Okay, it's us, comma, you and me, period. Backyards, comma, where we light up your court like the spectrum. Backyards, comma, where we light up your court like the spectrum. The next line is, it's not Philadelphia. So what I'm going to go through these. So, if you're writing it down, you can pick it up. So it's us, comma, you and me, period. First line. Second line, backyards, comma, where we light up your court like the spectrum, period. Third line, it's not Philadelphia, period. Next line. It's Gary, Indiana, period. Uh, so after, okay, it's us, comma, you and me, period, first line. Second line, backyards, comma, where we light up your court like the spectrum, period. Third line, it's not Philadelphia, period. Fourth line, it's Gary, comma, Indiana, period. Fifth line, we all shabby and torn shorts, greasy tank tops. And Chuck Taylors. We all shabby and torn shorts, comma, greasy tank tops, comma, and Chuck Taylors. This is our time. Comma. Away from the struggle of being so let me see. It's us, comma, you and me, period. Backyards, comma, where we light up your court like the spectrum, period. It's not Philadelphia, period. It's Gary, comma, Indiana, period. We all shabby and torn shorts, comma, greasy tank tops, comma, and Chuck Taylors, period. This is our time, comma, away from the struggle of being a son in a crazy family, period. So what I'm doing with some of the, since like I was talking about, sometimes words are, the abstract words are abstract, but I'm using them and giving more credence to that loyalty and trust and warmth that in childhood through visual connections. So again, you're always, a poem is, what we say is like word shots or word pictures of what was happening. So you imagistically always trying to place people. So I'm using those concepts that you all gave me, but I'm transforming them into the visuals so that you can connect with them instead of just saying, oh, I trust you, you trust me. Well, to show the trust, it's probably going to be more emphatic than just talking about the trust. So let's see. It's us, comma, you and me, period. Backyards, comma, where we light up your court like the spectrum, period. It's not Philadelphia, period. It's Gary, Indiana. It's Gary, comma, Indiana, period. We all shabby and torn shorts, comma, greasy tank tops, comma, and Chuck Taylors, period. This is our time, comma, away from the struggle of being a son in a crazy family, period. We love Okay, so I just came up with an anaphora where there's going to be this repetition happening. So uh, we love the arc of the ball against the light, period. We love the arc of the ball against the light, period. The second one is we love the squeak of our soles on the concrete, period. We love the squeak of our soles on the concrete, period. And then the third one is we love the sweat we make when it's us, comma, a basketball, comma, and our want to be Mike, period. We love the sweat we make when it's us, comma, a basketball, comma, and our want to be Mike, period. So let me go through what we have so far. It's us, comma, you and me, period, backyards, comma, where we light up your court like the spectrum, period. It's not Philadelphia, period. It's Gary, comma, Indiana, period. We all shabby and torn shorts, comma, greasy tank tops, comma, and Chuck Taylors, period. This is our time, comma, away from the struggle of being a son in a crazy family, period. We love the arc of the ball against the light, period. We love the squeak of our soles on the concrete, period. We love the sweat we make when it's us, a basketball, and I want to be Mike, period. Okay, so, all right, so I think I have the first draft. Okay, so after that, the last three lines, and before we go into our shells called home, we dap it up. And before we go into our shells called home, comma, we dap it up, period. Talk trash for tomorrow's. Oops, let me do, that's going to be a comma. So and before we go into our shells called home, comma, we dap it up, comma, talk trash for tomorrow's game, comma, when we come back to the spectrum like gladiators, period. Okay, so let me go through the whole thing. It's us, comma, you and me, period. Backyards, comma, where we light up your court like the spectrum, period. It's not Philadelphia, period. It's Gary, comma, Indiana, period. We all shabby and torn shorts, comma, greasy tank tops, comma, and Chuck Taylors, period. This is our time, comma, away from the struggle of being a son in a crazy family, period. We love the arc of the ball against the light, period. We love the squeak of our soles on the concrete, period. We love the sweat we make when it's us, comma, a basketball, comma, and our want to be Mike, period. And before we go into our shells called home, comma, we dap it up, comma. Talk trash for tomorrow's game, comma. When we come back to the spectrum, like gladiators, period. So what I want you to see is, and so Fred gave me the thing of friendship, and I think he did struggle too. And then I had childhood, loyal, trust, family, warmth. So all those things are in there. They may not be specifically the abstract wordings that you have, but they're in there. So this is what you're going for. This is, I want you to see the jumps that I made. I initially went with the first thing that came to me. You can overdo it, but usually I just try to go with the first thing that comes to me and go move with that. So now I have a first draft. And what I would do now is what I call layering. I would go and see if I get how I'm getting the reader into the poem. And if I'm placing them right away. I would look for a title, and the title could cement a lot of things too. So I can call it Bill's Court, which is my friend's name. And I want, or if I said, if I didn't call it Bill's Court, if I called it, I have two things: our love for art and the way we do. So I have three titles. I have to decide on which title I want to pick. So I have the way we do, our love for art, or Bill's Court. And what I'm looking at is probably trying to cement that aspect of friendship to compensate for the poem. So I kind of like the way we do, having that play on friendship being implied through that. And so as I would go back through it, and what I would do is start making more conscious efforts to make more things even more imagistic in that sense. It's us, comma, you with that scar on your forehead, me with that scar in my soul, backyards. I would just go in and start kind of plumping it up, so to speak, and illuminating more things. So when, as a poet and writer and artist, that's what again, magnifying the minute, looking at all those things. And as I layer, I'm adding, I'm subtracting from what doesn't need to be there. Some things can come in, some things may have to go out. But I was worried, really. Excuse me. I was worried, like, how am I going to do this? What if it doesn't work out? What if I don't come up with a poem? Because you're always worried about that. But as you can see, all you're doing is using what you have, connecting to your voice and making that present. And like they say, there's only 7 stories and all we're doing is retelling them. And I always tell my students, if there's only 7 stories and all we're doing is retelling them, why are all those books in the library? And it's because everybody has a voice and everybody is looking at the perspective of where they're coming from. I address Luke Skywalker is just a coming of age story that just happens to be in a galaxy far, far away. but it's the the kernel of what Luke Skywalker's story is. That coming of age thing can be placed in Idaho or Iowa or California, and you still have that story arc happening. You just don't, you just set up the environment around him. So I just wanted to kind of show you all these are the things that, and just seeing my process play out and kind of work on just this, like what I would call a really rough draft of a poem, but you can kind of see the skeletal aspects of how I'm going to put the meat and bones and sinew around everything so that it becomes a full-fledged picture. So I did want I want to open it up for questions if people have questions about anything, and kind of go from there.
So, Curtis, I do have a question, because one of the reasons why I asked you to do this is because we have this event called OP, Original Performance, and I know a lot of students write their own poetry, and it's different. Yeah. And so if you were doing this exercise in your class, would you actually take them through the same process that you just went through in order to help get them to develop their first draft? Because a lot of times when kids bring us poetry, I don't know, the other coaches, you guys can chime in, it's personal stuff.
Yeah. And
it's like, this is, yeah, you're right, that's fine, but that's not what this is.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And how can we take that personal stuff and turn it into what we're doing?
And so the thing is, how I guess how personal do you want them to be? Because you have different levels of poets. You have some people who are called confessional poets, which means the I is not veiled. That I, that's Kim Adonisio saying what what she's saying and addressing what she's addressing. And so in slam and open mic poetry, you get a lot of that, and it's immediate, and so what happens, especially with younger poets, is that they're connected to those emotions, and it's almost like a therapeutic kind of empathy that's coming out. So that's what you're getting. And for them to get to craft and understand craft, you do have to work with them. So if I was working with younger poets, yes, I would do, this would be a great thing to address. There are different types of prompts to address. You can have them, if you're trying to get them kind of away from the I, so to speak, because that's what it feels like you're saying to me, to the like the intimate, personal kind of stuff. You can have them veil stuff, like I was saying, personify something. You can have them do what's called ekphrastic poems. So you can take a picture and have them write a poem to that picture. What does this mean? What does this picture mean in a poem to you? And then that, that can get them kind of out of that immediacy of their lives and stuff. But since poetry is true, unfortunately, you're going to get that truth. So now, like, even though, because I'm thinking about this, what I just wrote, and it's very personal, but in me putting it in this context of it's us and it's we, I take myself out. I become part of the community, so to speak. So it's a collective I, instead of just me focusing on how I felt on the basketball court with Bill in his backyard. It's us. It's getting to that aspect of friendship that you posited. So now I'm focusing on that and how we feel about it and how young boys feel about it. So it becomes something that transmits not just from me, it's from me, but it transmits to all boys who go through that. There's no color line, or anybody who loves basketball can connect with this, or anybody who loves sports can connect with this, or anybody who has a friend can connect with this. And the more I would do to layer it, I'm, that aspect of friendship is going to work. Uh, just having images of me pulling on his shirt so he can't make the shot, or him pulling on my pant loop so I can't make the shot, or holding me back or fouling me. So those type of things are in my head right now. So the gestation of all that is, how do I, how do I push this into the poem so that it comes out in the poem? So yes, I think having something like this can get them to that first draft, and then you can talk about layering and how we can make this, even though it's a personal poem, and it's since you're dealing with people's lives, it's going to be all kind of stuff in there. But look at what I said is, this is our time, comma, away from the struggle of being a son in a crazy family. That says a lot, and it doesn't. You see what I'm saying? There's a generalness to that, but I give you enough kind of specifics to address that. What does crazy mean in this context? Is it crazy cool? Is it crazy? Wow, they crazy. They're really crazy. You don't want to go over their house, kind of thing. So it's kind of open to interpretation in that sense, but it's enough meat that you can see their struggle. And that was one of the words, this aspect of struggle. And playing basketball and being with this friend, the implications are that this is our time away from all that. Before we go back to it, we have this time of playing basketball, listening to the dribble, touching that pigskin and throwing it up in the air and watching it turn and turn until it goes through the hoop. And if it goes through the hoop, swish, baby. So it's that kind of thing. And dang, that's a good image. So I might have to put that in there somewhere. So so that's, I think this would be a great thing for them to start with, but then you're trying to get them away from just the immediacy of the pain and the hurt that they may be getting at, I think is what you're saying.
Okay. And Ronnie had a question.
Okay.
In the chat. He said, a lot of the poetry and interpretation events comes from multiple perspectives and characters. How can we get students to write from a different character/perspective than their own? And any exercises in particular or points of advice?
There's so many different prompts that you can use. You can, there's one out of the book that it asks to be an inanimate object, like I was talking about with the remote control. So what if you were it says, what if you were the ring on Mike Tyson's finger, or, the tattoo on somebody's arm, and speak from that, being that tattoo on, The Rock's arm, or the ring on Mike Tyson's finger, or the bracelet on J-Lo's wrist, and have them speak from that. And then, because the great thing about personification, looking at inanimate objects and giving them voice, is you're going to get to a truth, but you give them a voice that's humanistic, and they're going to get to their stuff in that way anyway. But now it's a focus thing. So if I'm the bracelets on J-Lo's wrist, there's so many things, her kids touching it, Alex Rodriguez giving it to her, touching it. I rubbed, just today I rubbed up against Alex. I rubbed up against, all the people on Dancing with the Stars. I rubbed up against, just thinking from the bracelet's perspective, how they can and let them dream and let them play with that. And that gets them away, that gets them to dream, to play, and to see why poetry does what it does. So I think that a prompt around some giving voice to an inanimate object on somebody, what if you were the tie on Nelson Mandela's, neck the day he got out of prison or something, whatever, it could be all kind of different things you can address. Your grandmother's wedding dress, that's stowed away in the attic or something like that. There's so many things you can do with just that prompt alone. So I think that would be a good place to start, addressing something inanimate and letting them play in that world of that.
Thank you for that.
Oh, no problem.
I think that is awesome. As you were talking, it reminded me of one of my kids who won poetry, and he talked about it. His piece was called "Let's Talk," and it was about gun violence. And the big part of the piece in Richard's piece, the major poem, was it was a bullet talking about its life as a bullet, and what that bullet goes through. And as you were talking, it just gave me flashbacks, and I thought, wow, that is really one of the keys as to why that piece worked, because it was also the thread of the piece. But yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah,
Those awesome ideas.
because I actually have a poem that addresses the bullet too, and it comes after Ross Gay's poem about a bullet, and it's just like, how do you feel? How would you, it's saying, how would you feel being slammed in the back of your neck at supersonic speed, going out into this thing until you hit a blackness? And, and it's just from the bullet's perspective of it, the bullet is just a tool. It has no, it's not, its life is not, I mean, you can, well, there's different ways to address it, but when it's being shot out of a gun, just thinking about that. And yeah, so it's so many ways to play with that. And I think it's really interesting because now they're not just playing, they're not just playing with their hurt. They're not just playing, they're doing something about it. Like people say, there are different aspects to poetry that are political and stuff like that. But someone's just writing, just using your voice is political. Like they say, silence is keep, if you're being silenced, you're not saying the things that you need to say. So that has reverberations of that. But just saying, I love the oak tree in my backyard becomes political in and of itself, because you've given voice to this, and giving voice and owning your voice and honing your voice is the big thing. So that's how we get style and characterization and all that stuff. So they do need a voice, and this is their voice on the page. And poetry does that. You have to write it, craft it, and speak it, and people hear it. That's the only art form that does that, probably other than singer-songwriter.
And can you tell me real quick, so the poem that you just wrote, what were the 6 words again? Because I want to use this as like an example for something I could teach the kids.
Okay, so you want me to go through the whole thing?
No. I've got the poem. I wrote that down as you were talking. But what were the 6?
Well, the 6 words. Okay, friendship was the theme. The first word was childhood. The second word was loyal. The third word was trust. The fourth, family. The fifth, struggle. And the 6th, warmth.
Okay.
And what you can do is you can ask them, although those words may not be in there specifically, you can say, where in this do you see these words? And you should be able to find that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know it's almost, yeah, that was quick. Any other questions? Anybody have any other questions?
What did you say you would have titled that again?
I have 3 titles, 3 working titles. The one I like is The Way We Do. The Way We Do is the one I like. The other 2 are Our Love for Art and Bill's Court. BILL''S Court.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
So Curtis, I guess my question for you is, if as you continue this, when you finish it, can you send us or send me the poem I can share it?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. And then I'll do a shameless plug for you guys. I've used Curtis's stuff in competition before. I'm just gonna say that, you know, and I have a ton of his stuff at school. But you can find his stuff on Amazon. Am I right? You can find your stuff on Amazon.
And at www.poetcrisler.com is my website, so you can find me there.
He's off the chain. That's all I'm gonna say.
Thanks, man.
www.poetcrisler.
Yeah, www.poetcrisler.com.
Okay, thanks so much.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Ronnie. Thanks, everybody. This was great. I love this, man. Thanks for having me, Fred.
Oh, no problem. I appreciate you doing this for us.
Oh, no problem at all. I hope the rest of the day goes as just as well.
It should.
Thank you for sharing your gift, Curtis. I struggle with my wannabe original poet writers and boy, and just the idea of giving them exercises to focus outside of their little selves. It's been a gift. Thank you. Let alone listening and watching you work. So
thanks. It's I always wanted to be, I thought I wanted to be primary school teacher, and that didn't happen. But I thought middle school I could still work with them. High school, I thought they would be challenging me and we'd be fighting and whatever. I don't know. But it's even in high school, though, if you just getting them to the page, my whole thing is I don't care what you do, get to the page, because if you're not at the page, you're not creating and you're not engaged. And so you have to get them to the page. And yeah, there's and I can get this to Fred so he can get it to other people as well. I can send prompts and stuff like that that you all can use, possibly use to create new stuff. Actually, I have one that has poetry, fiction, creative nonfiction. It has a lot of different stuff in it, so I'll send that to him, and y'all can, he can distribute that to y'all some way.
This was awesome.
Fred, we're going to make you do that, Fred. Sorry, Ronnie. We're going to have a share, Fred, if it's me.
Oh, I'll make sure you guys get it.
Okay.
Maybe in 21, 22, but
I love your little shot. Bad, you're bad. Okay, Ronnie. Ronnie
I don't coach OP. I'll make sure you guys get that. So.
Okay. Well, Ronnie has something to say, so let's let him
know.
know.
I was just saying this was awesome, and I appreciate it. And thank you for sharing your gift. I thought that was really cool to kind of see the way your mind. I would have liked to, if we would have been able to see like the screen in your hand. I would have liked to have literally seen like.
Yeah, I wish I could have. Yeah, and it was just like once I got that first image, it's like, okay, let's go with this. And what do I connect that with? And then I thought about again, it's just like music. If there's certain types of music, any music we like, any artist that we like that does that music, we know where we were, or it places us back in time to when we first heard that. So if it was in the 80s, if it was in the 90s, we're placed back at that, McDonald's that we parked at or whatever.
Well, say that because I was literally just thinking. I heard REO Speedwagon. I was in the back of a Ford Explorer at a parking lot, McDonald's parking lot in Brookville, Indiana. So I was like, yeah, I mean, it just made me think of that.
That is all that stuff right there. The title, Brookville, Indiana, because a lot of people don't know about Brookville, right. Indiana. And then you just, REO Speedway. I had a poem where my friend introduced me to, we were listening to Jack and Diane, and I didn't know, that was my first time hearing John Cougar Mellencamp. And I remember us being in the car. We were just learning to drive, we're 16, 17, and he's like, oh man, this is the jam. And I was like, is it really? And then when I love it, you know, because it has the Tracy Chapman feel too of you drive a fast car too, you know, fast car, and so it's just like, oh, and I, you know, when they get to the clapping and stuff and they break it down, it's just like, oh yeah. So I always have that another moment of me and a friend having that. So those are the things I think that's really kind of connects you to the work and getting you to the page.